The laughter died in her throat. What started as a casual stroll home turned into a chilling scene. 5 figures, shadows draped in the fading light, blocked her path. Their faces, contorted in sneers, were too close, their eyes glinting with something ugly and familiar. It was a scene she'd witnessed countless times, a scene etched in the collective memory of her people. But this time, she was the target. Panic swelled, constricting her throat. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drum against the silence of the approaching night. She clutched her purse tighter, her knuckles bone white, a meager shield against the palpable hatred emanating from the group. She wanted to scream, to run, to disappear, but her feet felt rooted to the spot, her voice lost in the suffocating fear. Well, look what we have here. The voice, dripping with mock surprise, sliced through the silence. It was him, the ringleader, the one they called Snake. His reputation preceded him, cruel, unpredictable, fueled by a hatred that burned hotter than any righteous fire. She knew this dance. She knew the steps, the rhythm of escalating aggression. She'd seen it play out before. The taunts escalating to shoves, the shoves to blows. But knowing offered little comfort. Tonight, the script felt real, the danger visceral, and she was alone, trapped in the spotlight of their hate. Lost your way, little bird? Snake took a menacing step closer, his voice laced with a sardonic amusement. The others chuckled, their shadows shifting, closing in like predators encircling their prey. The air grew thick with racial slurs, each word a venomous dart aimed at her heart. Each syllable was a stark reminder of the hate that simmered beneath the surface of their so-called civilized society. The casual cruelty of their words, the ease with which they spat them, spoke volumes about the world they were trying to create, a world where she didn't belong. She tried to speak, to reason, but the words caught in her throat, stuck behind a wall of fear. Her voice, usually strong and vibrant, emerged as a strangled whisper. "Please," she choked out, "just let me pass." Her plea was met with another round of laughter, cruel and mocking. One of them shoved her, not hard enough to knock her down, but enough to assert their dominance, to remind her of her vulnerability. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Crying, she knew, would only fuel their twisted sense of power. "What's the matter?" Snake taunted, leaning closer, his breath hot on her cheek. "Cat got your tongue?" His words were like blows, each one chipping away at her composure, her dignity. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, a silent prayer escaping her lips. "Please," she whispered again, her voice trembling, "someone help me." Unbeknownst to her, someone had heard. A figure, silhouetted against the distant streetlights, was moving swiftly towards them. He had been walking back from a late meeting, his mind preoccupied with work, when a familiar laugh cut through his thoughts like a shard of ice. It was a laugh he knew well, a laugh that always heralded trouble. His pace quickened, his senses sharpening, years of training kicking in. He saw her first, his wife, her slender frame dwarfed by the menacing figures surrounding her. His heart lurched, a primal fear gripping him. He saw the fear etched on her face, the way she shrank back from their taunts, and a cold fury settled over him. He had always known that this day might come, that the hate festering in the shadows might find its way to their doorstep. He had hoped to shield her, to protect her from the ugliness of the world, but deep down he knew it was a futile wish. Racism, like a virus, had a way of seeping into every crevice of society, leaving no one untouched. As he got closer, he heard the slurs, the venom in their voices, and his blood ran cold. These were not just bored teenagers looking for a fight. This was different, this was personal, this was hate in its purest, most unadulterated form. "Get away from her!" The words ripped from his throat, a guttural roar that shattered the night. The gang turned, startled by the sudden intrusion. They saw him then, a tall, imposing figure backlit by the streetlights, his face hidden in the shadows. But it was his voice that stopped them in their tracks, a voice accustomed to command, a voice that had barked orders in the face of danger. He strode into the circle, his movements fluid and purposeful, his eyes never leaving the group. He moved with the confidence of someone who had faced down danger before, someone who understood the language of violence. Years of combat training had honed his instincts, sharpened his reflexes, and prepared him for this very moment. He stopped in front of his wife, placing himself between her and the gang. He didn't touch her, didn't need to. His presence alone was a shield, a silent promise of protection. He turned to face the group, his face now illuminated by the streetlight. His expression was unreadable, his eyes cold and hard. "You picked the wrong night to pick a fight," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Now walk away." A flicker of uncertainty passed over Snake's face, quickly replaced by a mask of bravado. He'd expected fear, submission, not this quiet strength. He tried to regain control of the situation, to puff up his chest and reclaim the upper hand. "This ain't your business, old man," Snake sneered, trying to sound menacing. "Just walk away while you still can." But the other members of the gang weren't so sure. They shifted uneasily, their eyes darting between their leader and the imposing figure in front of them. They had sensed the change in the air, the subtle shift in power. This wasn't a man to be trifled with. This was a man who had seen things, done things, that they couldn't even begin to imagine. The man just smiled, a chillingly humorless smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You made it my business when you harassed my wife," he said, his voice deceptively calm. "Now I'm going to say this one last time. Walk away." He didn't make a move, didn't need to. The threat hung in the air, unspoken but understood. The gang, outnumbered and outmatched, hesitated for a moment longer, then melted away into the night, their bravado evaporating like mist in the morning sun. The silence that followed was deafening. The man turned to his wife, his demeanor softening as he looked at her. He saw the fear lingering in her eyes, the way her body trembled with residual adrenaline. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. He reached out, his hand hovering hesitantly before gently cupping her cheek. She leaned into his touch, drawing strength from his presence. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Tears, held at bay for so long, finally spilled down her cheeks. But these were not tears of fear, but tears of relief, of gratitude, of the overwhelming love she felt for the man standing beside her. They stood there for a moment, embraced in the silence of the night, two souls bound by love and a shared understanding of the darkness that lurked in the hearts of men. The scars of this night, they knew, would remain. They would be etched in their memories, a stark reminder of the hate that still festered in their world. But they would also be a testament to their love, their resilience, their refusal to be defined by the hatred of others. This night was not an isolated incident. It was a microcosm of a larger struggle, a battle waged in the streets and in the courts, in the halls of power and in the quiet corners of everyday life. It was a battle against prejudice, against ignorance, against the insidious belief that one group of people was inherently superior to another. The fight against racism wasn't just about physical confrontations. It was about dismantling the systems that perpetuated inequality, the institutions that upheld discrimination. It was about education, about awareness, about challenging our own biases and prejudices. It was about recognizing that racism wasn't just about overt acts of hatred, but about the subtle ways in which it permeated every aspect of society. It was about the unconscious bias that influenced hiring decisions, the systemic racism that resulted in disproportionate incarceration rates, the institutionalized discrimination that limited opportunities for people of color. Despite the challenges, they refused to be victims. They would not allow fear to dictate their lives, to limit their dreams. They would continue to fight for equality, for justice, for a world where their children wouldn't have to face the same hate and prejudice. They would draw strength from their ancestors, from the countless men and women who had fought and died for the right to be treated with dignity and respect. They would find inspiration in the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who reminded us that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. They would not be silenced. They would not be intimidated. They would continue to raise their voices, to challenge injustice, to demand better for themselves and for future generations. They would meet hate with love, ignorance with education, and prejudice with understanding. The fight against racism was a marathon, not a sprint. There would be setbacks, there would be challenges, but they would persevere. They would choose love over hate, hope over despair, and action over apathy. Because in the end, love was the most powerful weapon they had. It was the force that could break down barriers, heal wounds, and build bridges of understanding. It was the light that could dispel the darkness, the hope that could guide them towards a brighter future. As they walked away, hand in hand, they knew that their journey was far from over. But they also knew that they were not alone. They had each other, they had their community, and they had the unwavering belief that a better world was possible. And that, in the face of hate, was the most powerful weapon of all.